Nobody expected a Nigerian producer from Lagos to take on one of the biggest names in Latin music and almost make it stick. But that is exactly what happened when Iziani Chidera Godfrey, a producer who goes by the name Dera, decided to file a federal copyright lawsuit against Bad Bunny, the Puerto Rican superstar whose 2022 album Un Verano Sin Ti broke streaming records and dominated the summer like a heat wave nobody saw coming. This is the story of how a legal battle that had everything – stolen beats, missing lawyers, a vanishing song, a record label drama, and a federal judge who eventually had enough – collapsed under its own weight before it ever reached a real verdict. And the deeper you dig into this story, the more you realize just how messy and complicated the music industry really is behind all those catchy hooks and smooth rhythms. Welcome to Pop Showroom, where we bring you the stories behind the headlines. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that button right now because this story goes deeper than anything you've seen in the mainstream media. Let us go back to the beginning. In 2019, Dera produced a track called Empty My Pocket for a rising Afropop artist named Joeboy. The song was smooth, groovy, full of that warm energy that makes African music feel like sunshine on your skin. It was the kind of track that floats around the internet, gets added to playlists, finds its way into ears across the world without much fanfare. Nobody outside the Afropop scene was paying much attention to it, but it existed, it was out there, and most importantly, it was copyrighted creative work that belonged to real people who put real effort into making it. Fast forward to 2022, Bad Bunny drops Un Verano Sin Ti and the world loses its mind. The album is a masterpiece of reggaeton, Latin trap, and Afrobeats fusion, and it spends weeks at the top of global charts. Among the tracks on that album is one called Enséñame a Bailar, a song that caught the ear of people who were very familiar with Empty My Pocket. According to Dera, in those connected to the original song, the Bad Bunny track used elements from their 2019 recording without permission and without giving credit where credit was due. That accusation alone was enough to spark a fire. The drama first went public in 2023 when Mr. Easy, the Nigerian artist and founder of Empower Africa, a label that works with young African talent, came out and said it plainly. He claimed that Enséñame a Bailar had both sampled and interpolated material from Empty My Pocket. For people who do not know the difference, a sample means you literally take audio from an existing recording and use it in your new song. An interpolation means you re-record the melody or some part of the original, but change enough of it to make it sound different while still borrowing the essence. Either way, if you did not get permission, you are in territory that could get you sued. Mr. Easy said the team around Bad Bunny had not only used the material, but had ignored attempts by the original creators to get proper credit. That was the match that lit the fire. Bad Bunny's legal team did not stay quiet. They pushed back and said that permission had in fact been obtained, and they pointed to a company called Lakizo Entertainment as the entity that had granted that clearance. According to the defense, Lakizo Entertainment had distributed the original recording at some point and therefore had the authority to authorize its use. On paper, that sounds like a reasonable explanation. If you got the green light from the people who control the song, you should be covered, right? But here's where things got complicated in a way that could make your head spin. Dera's side said that Lakizo Entertainment never had the authority to grant such permission in the first place. Think about that for a second. You have one side saying we got the permission and the other side saying the person who gave you that permission had no right to give it. That's not just a copyright dispute anymore. That's a question about who actually owns what and who has the legal right to make deals on behalf of the song. And apparently, that very same disagreement sparked a separate conflict between Lakizo Entertainment and Empower Africa that got ugly enough to push Empty My Pocket off streaming platforms entirely for a period of time. The song just disappeared, vanished. If you went looking for it, it was gone. That kind of move does not happen by accident. That is what happens when people are fighting over who controls a piece of music and nobody is backing down. By May 2025, the dispute had officially moved into federal court. Dera filed the lawsuit with Empower Africa joining as a co-plaintiff, which meant the label was standing alongside the producer in the legal fight. The case was assigned to Judge Otis Wright II, a federal judge in California, and it looked like this thing was actually going to be heard in court. There were real allegations, real legal filings, real defendants. The machinery of the American legal system was in motion. Bad Bunny's legal team was going to have to respond and defend their position on the record. But then, things started falling apart on the plaintiff's side, and they fell apart fast. In January, just months after the lawsuit was filed, Dera's own attorneys withdrew from the case. That is a significant event in any lawsuit. When your lawyers walk out, it means something has gone seriously wrong behind the scenes. They cited what they called irreparable differences over litigation strategy. That phrase is lawyer language for "we cannot agree on how to handle this, and it has gotten bad enough that we can't keep working together." Whatever was being discussed in those private meetings between Dera and his legal team, it ended with them packing up and leaving him to handle a federal copyright case on his own. If you've never been involved in legal proceedings, let me tell you something. Navigating federal court without a lawyer is not like writing a strongly worded letter. There are deadlines, there are specific filings that have to be done a certain way, there are hearings you have to show up to, and if you miss any of it, the court doesn't call to remind you, it just moves on. And that's exactly what happened here. Without attorneys guiding him, Dera began missing deadlines. The court had scheduled a discovery hearing for February 5th, a routine part of the legal process where both sides exchange information and evidence. Dera didn't show up. That was a serious problem. Meanwhile, Empower Africa, the co-plaintiff, was having its own issues meeting court requirements. The label had stepped in to support the lawsuit and had its name attached to the complaint, but when it came time to follow through with what the court required, they also fell short. The judge removed Empower Africa from the case entirely after they failed to comply with court deadlines. So now Dera was standing alone in a federal lawsuit, without lawyers, without his label behind him, and the clock ticking on deadlines he was already struggling to meet. The final blow came when a March 6th filing deadline passed and Dera did not submit what was required. That was the moment Judge Wright decided he had seen enough. On the record, the judge wrote plainly that the court concluded Godfrey had abandoned the case. The dismissal was issued, and just like that, the lawsuit was over. No trial, no verdict on the merits of the copyright claim, no ruling on whether Enséñame Bailar actually took something from Empty My Pocket. The case died not because a judge decided Bad Bunny was innocent, but because the man who filed the lawsuit stopped showing up to fight it. Now here's what you need to sit with for a moment, because this is the part that will stay with you. The central question of whether that Bad Bunny track used material from Empty My Pocket without proper authorization was never actually answered in court. The judge dismissed the case on procedural grounds, meaning the content of the claim was never fully examined and ruled on. Bad Bunny's team won, yes, but they won because their opponent ran out of steam before the race was over. That's a very different thing from winning because a judge looked at all the evidence and said there was no wrongdoing. The music industry will continue to debate this one because the facts behind the original dispute are still sitting there, unresolved, like a question that got interrupted before the answer could come out. For Dera, this outcome has to hurt. He made a track that he believed was used without permission. He found a label willing to stand with him, hired lawyers, went through the process of filing in federal court, and then the whole thing collapsed from the inside. He didn't lose because his claim was weak. He lost because the structure around him crumbled. His lawyers left, his label got dropped, and he couldn't hold it all together on his own. That is a story about the music industry that never makes it into the press releases. For the Afrobeats community, the story resonates in a deeper way. This was a case about a relatively unknown African track potentially being absorbed into a massive Latin album without the original creators getting their fair share of credit or compensation. That kind of thing happens more often than the industry likes to admit. When global sounds blend and borrow, the people at the top of the food chain do not always make sure the originators are protected. Whether or not that is what happened here remains legally unanswered, but the conversation it started is not going away. What we do know is this: Bad Bunny walks away clean in the eyes of the court. Un Farala Sin Ti remains one of the most celebrated albums of this decade. Enséñame a Bailar keeps playing on playlists around the world, and somewhere out there, Dera is sitting with the story that started with a beat he made in 2019 and ended in a federal courthouse without the closure he was looking for. Neither side commented after the ruling. The silence after a legal storm like this can be louder than anything either of them could have said. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this situation, so please share your opinions in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated on this story.